let's take it back to the early days of marriage.
I like those days.
Those are, yeah, I mean,
Good
we're
memories.
still kind of in the early days of marriage, but there were earlier days than now. And money was something that was somewhat of a pain point in our life, as we fit that all so common bill of there being too much month at the end of the money a few times. And I think that's like, when I think back on our first year of marriage, that cloud of financial pressure, I definitely remember that. As much as I enjoyed our first year of marriage, and of course there's the newlywed bliss, and it was fun. You know, it was just so much fun.
So good.
But that was when I think about what was keeping me up at night then, because it seems like there's always been something keeping me up at nighttime. The thing that was keeping me up at night then was money, or the lack thereof, or, you know, finances.
Yeah, I think that was our biggest pain point, probably. It wasn't a big issue as far as, okay, I shouldn't say this. I feel like we had more arguments about how to spend our money when we had more of it, kind of like more in the middle zone.
Yes.
And then I feel like now we have less arguments about how we spend money because it doesn't matter as dramatically. But when we were newly married, I think I would just stress out when you bought coffee.
Yeah.
Or ate out.
Yes.
I remember that happening.
Yeah, which in hindsight is so valid. When I think about, you know, a $5 purchase at a coffee shop in relation to what our like monthly or weekly income was, I'm like, dang, I do not blame you at all for, you know, kind of stressing out about that. And certainly when it came to eating out, I don't blame you at all. But that was something that like I just wanted so badly to make room for in the budget. Mm-hmm. And I think I never wanted to feel, nobody ever probably wants to feel this way. It's like, I don't want to feel poor. And that thing, I guess, was one of those things that like gave me that little joy in life. It's like, if I can spend $3 on a double espresso, then I'll have like this energy for life, you know, both mentally, emotionally, physically.
Yeah. I don't know. It was just one of those seasons where, okay, so we got married, and then I had never lived on my own before. So all the concept of all these bills was really new to me. I was super frugal growing up. I was like total penny pincher, but I also had only had like a real job. I was a shoe salesperson at Macy's, like for the 3 months, just through the holiday season before we got married. And that was like my most consistent work schedule. Up until that point, I did like random types of odd jobs to earn money. And I had just turned 21 when we got married, so I wasn't that old. Anyways, all that to be said, that was kind of like my mindset around money coming into marriage. I'd like bought my car cash. I'd saved my whole life because there wasn't a steady flow of money coming in. Right. So I didn't like money really going out. So I never knew when I was going to get more money. So I just would stockpile what I had.
Yes.
And I think what I mainly spent money on was shoes. I did buy some expensive shoes, which I still have. I'm actually grateful that I bought those.
That's a good investment then. Yeah, it is interesting. Katie and I will talk about this a lot. Like, there's 4.5 years between Katie and I in age. And so that 4.5 years obviously seems smaller and smaller as time goes by. But I feel like at that first season in marriage, it was a big chunk in that I had 4.5 more years of a short adult life of, you know, living out on my own, working multiple jobs, paying for my own bills to some extent. You know, I lived at home for part of that time too. And then I moved out about 1.5 years before we got married. And I think that combination of you coming straight from your family's house, never having a steady paycheck or a consistent job, really not liking ever spending money on things like food or coffee.
Yeah, like I was not like the social single person. No. I hated spending money on food because it's just like you ate it and it was gone.
Yes,
you know?
Like if you went out with friends, you would order water and eat the free chips and salsa and then go home.
I'd probably get a soup.
A soup, there you go. Yeah. And so I think that was a huge blessing for me in hindsight, but it also brought some. The conflict wasn't that I think you were wrong in your principle. It came from you like it blowing your mind that I would even desire these things.
Yeah, I wasn't fair in my assessment of your spending habits, because you were a big saver too.
Yes.
And so that was a big blessing. I think the only difference in like I'm going to speak for you,
Sure.
and you can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I'd rather you speak for me. I sound smarter when you do.
Stop. I'm just going to say, I think that coming into marriage, it was a big deal for us to be on our own with all these expenses, because it was the first time you had all these expenses too.
Yes.
Because you'd had like a job, you saved a lot of money, but you were also able to spend a lot of money because you had a really low life
Rent
of expense.
and stuff. Yeah, either I was living at home for free, or I was living in a guy pad with 5 or 6 other guys, and rent was like $200 a month. And so there was always this excess that I had.
Yeah, I feel like we were in a similar position of these bills were blowing our minds.
Yes. To kind of give you guys, we're not going to share like all of our numbers, but I'll share like those numbers for that first probably 6 months of our marriage, maybe our first full year, where I had gotten our apartment maybe 3 months before we got married. Mm-hmm. And I went from paying, like I said, $200 a month in rent to rent was $11.50, and that was before utilities and internet and garbage and all that stuff. And that jump just seemed like so mind blowing to me. I was like, $1,150 for rent, and we're just gonna give this money to the landlord every single month and never see it again. And so, $11.50, and then obviously on top of that, maybe housing altogether with garbage and utilities was around $1,400, I'd say. Then of course that was before groceries, gas. You guys, I'm not going to go through the bills of life, but that was where our expenses roughly were. And my job at that point was bringing in like $1,800 a month. That's like, I don't know where and so I really don't know how this worked out mathematically, because that $1,800 a month when I was a single guy and rent was $200 was more than enough. And I could go skiing, I could eat out when I wanted to, I could go on trips when I wanted to. And I think something that helped was that I always, because I had worked a lot prior to moving out and taking this job, my income wasn't always that number. My income wasn't always that small.
Yeah.
For years I had done different things where my income was higher, and I was able to save, the so-called nest egg or whatever. And so I always had that buffer, which took away some of the stress. But by the time we actually had moved in to our apartment, that buffer had dwindled dramatically. After paying for our honeymoon, the wedding ring, first and last month, deposit, my car broke. I had to replace a bunch of things in our car. I had a bunch of dental bills. And all of a sudden I'm like, dang, that nest egg is non-existent. And all of a sudden our monthly expenses are exceeding my monthly take home. How is this going to pencil out?
I know, every month. Okay, I feel like we've done this for so many months. We sit down, we write out all our expenses and then how much money we're making, and then somehow it works out. Like, the Lord's been really gracious. I think the first year we lived like the first 6 months on wedding cash. So thank you to everyone who came to our wedding.
No joke. I'm sure we missed a
survived.
bunch of thank you notes to people. And if we did, we are so thankful.
We still think of you by name. So that was a huge blessing. And then we did random stuff. Like, we liquidated everything.
Yes. We sold because we both had a car when we got married. We sold my car.
Yeah, we sold Elisha's car.
Because yours had better gas mileage.
That's the hamster we drove until we had... Did we have 3 kids, or was it just with the 2?
With 3, because I kept that for my job in Washington. Oh, yeah. Remember that?
Yeah, that's right. And then we sold, Elisha had this giant like circus tent he used when he was selling Christmas trees down in California. So we sold that.
Yep.
And that was great.
Yes, that was. I was doing whatever I could to like go get gigs with my family. And so I actually wrote down a list. I'm gonna say this really quick of all the things we did. And I'm sure I missed things. I know everybody does a lot of things for work, but it's kind of fun doing little retroactive, looking at retroactively at what you've done. So in that first year of marriage, I was a server, I was a bartender, a barista, I worked with a friend who has a blind installation business, and I installed blinds.
I want to clarify for the bartending thing, because I feel like a bartender could mean a lot of things. It was at a restaurant. It wasn't
it
like
was
a
like
club or
restaurant.
anything.
Yeah, no, it was a
Anyways.
very wholesome environment.
Just to clarify.
Yes.
I don't know. When I heard bartender, like growing up, I always thought it was like some sketchy, like,
Sure.
you know,
There's like scantily
like
clad
he works
women.
like all night. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's not what it was.
No, it was it closed at like 10 o'clock at night, and it was like the equivalent of like a Olive Garden, probably that type of environment. So then I installed mailboxes with a guy. I taught private guitar lessons, mandolin lessons, and fiddle lessons. I did real estate, so that was always like, okay, we're not making a lot of money now, but when you get your real estate license, you think, like the sky's the limit. You're like,
it is.
Because it really is, but getting your real estate license doesn't make you any money. In fact, it costs you money. And that was something that, people are like, oh, it's such a low startup cost to get going in real estate, which comparative, obviously, to like a ton of different careers that require a degree. It is extremely low, startup cost. But when people would say things like, oh, it doesn't cost anything to get going, I literally thought like, oh, it doesn't cost anything to get going. And so when there would be like a $600, startup fee to join the MLS, or to go take your final real estate exam, it costs like $250, and I failed it twice, and so I had to go pay that a bunch of times. And then there's like the eKey, monthly membership that was $19 a month, and then I'd have to buy my lock boxes. It all added up, and I was like, you said it didn't cost anything to get going, and this is more than nothing. And when you don't have any money, anything more than nothing is a lot. So I did real estate. We started our network marketing company then in our first year.
We started it, together.
We started Voteberg Music Academy. We did random work for Katie's father, like internet work. We'd like work on his website. We would try to make he would make videos for him, and he'd pay us for that.
Different random like tools that like printables and
yes.
Thank you, Daddy, for your
yes.
contract.
Exactly. I did concerts with my family, and then a couple little random concerts with guys in the Bend area too, for like $50 or $75. And then this was the best ever.
Oh, that's what I was just thinking of.
Wait, did you see it written down?
I did. I saw it.
This was so awesome. So we got married in May, and come July, it was that whole like, how are we doing this? Like, how are we going to pay for the next month? And at this point, we had found out we're pregnant. And so I was feeling the pressure for sure. My family really wanted us to come up for the 4th of July, which was like a 5-hour trip. And that just was a big deal for us to pay for gas and to get up to my family's house. And so they lined up a concert up there, and that would help kind of cover gas. So it's like, hey, like you get $250 for the concert, and that can kind of cover some expenses. I was like, okay, sweet, let's do this. And so we go up there, and on the 4th of July, there was this local like race, like a fun run. And there was a part of it called the SWAT challenge, and like the local police department put it on. And the winner of the SWAT challenge got $300 cash. And so I signed up for it, which was a $25 entry fee, which was sketchy. I was like, I can't believe I'm doing this right now. And
what did you have to do? What were the activities?
Well, you ran a mile and a half, and then you did as many push-ups as you could do in, I think, 60 seconds or 2 minutes or something. You did as many sit-ups as you could do in a minute, and then you did as many pull-ups as you could do in a minute. And then there's like a point system where you combined all those things together. And I won.
Woo!
$300. And so we
baby.
came home from that trip feeling we are very on top of the world, because I got $250 for the concert, $300 for the SWAT challenge. We celebrated, I think, at Chipotle on the way home.
It was a party.
Felt good.
So the one random thing. So I was kind of like behind the scenes with Voteberg Music Academy, like filming and editing our videos while you were at work, because I didn't get a job after we got married either. I always had this more entrepreneurial bent. Elisha did too. And so we were like, we want to have something else going. We had his real estate going that I was totally out of, but we wanted something else too. We wanted diversification. Mm-hmm. So I would stay home and do those things, and then try to figure out how to not burn food, and I was pretty good at cleaning, I feel like.
Oh, you were good at all those things.
And then I got a couple tutoring gigs.
Yes.
They were like 30 minutes away. And if you guys have tracked on this podcast, I get pretty nauseous when I am pregnant. So I would drive to these things, like literally drive like halfway there, pull over, throw up, drive the other way, try to get through the tutoring. And then on the way back, there was always a Taco Bell, and I could eat their bean burritos and lemonade. And so I'd always like get that.
Yeah, and it was like $1.87.
Yeah, it was so worth it.
Yeah.
Anyways, so that's kind of like what I was doing in the midst of this. Elisha did end up closing 6 deals his first year in real estate.
Yes, that didn't happen until later on. But
game-changing money. Like towards the end of our first year of marriage, he closed a few deals.
Yes, that put us over the edge. Yes, exactly. You also walked dogs.
Oh, yeah, I got on like a dog walking site.
Yes.
That was just like random dog options. And I think actually I walked dogs once I had Leon.
Wow, good for you.
So I just was like, well, I take him for a walk at night anyways.
Yes. And, we just threw out a bunch of things, and we're just kind of sharing our story here. So if you were looking for like your, top 5 tips for getting out of debt or for budgeting, sorry, we're not giving you very clear steps of action.
We'll try to give you some as we go along. We'll wrap some of these
things up. But what's really cool about that first, like Katie said, prior to me closing, I think like my first solid deal, which I think was in March. So we got married in May, and then it was in March I closed those 2 deals, the buy side and the sell side, that one. So I guess that was 10 months of just really, each month was like that challenge of never quite having enough. And then we'd like sell something and get to the next month, then sell something and get to the next month. And then I closed those 2 deals in March, and that like put that chunk in the bank, which really felt like we had that emergency fund, that like Dave Ramsey talks about. And that was the first time, 10 months into marriage that we had that. And that was a really awesome experience because we both realized how much like stress and pressure that alleviated in our conversation and in just our overall dynamic. And since then, I think we've always been able to keep, am I right? That emergency fund there. Just we haven't touched it since, we
opened up its own private little bank account, and that just kind of sits there and we don't count it.
Yeah.
And that did alleviate a lot of pressure because in the beginning it was like, great, we were just hustling for things. And a concept I want to talk about is a poor versus a broke mindset because we never felt poor. Mm-hmm. I mean, you mentioned feeling poor maybe if you couldn't get coffee or something.
Well, I didn't want to feel poor. Yeah.
Yeah. But for the majority of our marriage in that first year, second year, third year, really, we didn't feel poor. And we would talk about that. And where was I going with this?
I don't know.
Starting out with the nest egg. Anyways, it just alleviated a ton of pressure and stress. Elisha and I are savers. So I will say this. We felt like we were broke when we did have $1,500, $2,000, $3,000 in the bank. An expense for us that happened every single year was we'd pay a midwife $5,000. Insurance didn't cover the midwife. And so every time our child was born, we were kind of like saving up for the baby. Yeah. And then we would feel like that $5,000 would get wiped out and we'd maybe have a little bit left over in the bank.
Right.
So we were saving that whole time. But we both wanted to save more, I guess.
Yes. I mean, you always want to save more, but
it was tight.
Yeah, it was genuinely tight. And Katie talked about the poor versus the broke mindset. And I think that, it's really interesting looking back at these things that we did literally within like the first week of being home from our honeymoon, the businesses that we started, Voteberg Music Academy, and then our network marketing business, Neolife, being one of those other things, in addition to a bunch of other things, where we were just throwing a bunch of stuff against the wall and seeing what would stick. And what's crazy to me is that those things didn't bring us in a ton of money in that first year, but those are the 2 things that are providing so abundantly for us now. Mm-hmm. And we feel so provided for through those 2 things that were part of that like frenzy of a first few months where it's like, okay, I don't want to work at a restaurant forever to provide for my family. Real estate just seems so hard for me to get going right now. Can we get something else going in the meantime? And because we had our head in this space of let's make use of our time in these early years, and we were doing it together, we were able to try a lot of different things. And I mean, we failed a ton. We just failed at a ton of things. But those two things were two of the things that we did not fail in. And they are now providing abundantly for us 5 years later. And that mindset, people, it's so easy to roll your eyes at so many of the self-development mantras or platitudes or cliches. But I can't tell you how crucial and critical that was to us just getting through that season. When you're reading story after story and biography after biography of people that were in far worse financial situations than we were and how they climbed out of it, you can't help but have hope and excitement and great expectation for the future. And I think because we had our head in that space, we never fell into a poor person's mindset. We kept it broke. We're like, well, we're broke now, but look at all these other people that were broke and look how they climbed out of it. And so we always had this solutions mindset. Like, this is currently where we're at. How are we going to climb out of it? And that one kept it really fun because there is hope. And hope isn't the same as positivity. Katie's uncle, one of my best friends, always says, because I think that we're in a culture that likes to have positive thinking or think positive thoughts. And the cool thing about being a Christian, not to totally jump here to like a spiritual thing when we're talking about money, even though there's tons of, correlation and crossover. We as Christians, we don't just have positive thoughts for the future. We have a substantial hope. And in fact, was it Hebrews that says hope is the substance? No, faith is the substance of things hoped for. And so we've got a substance that gives us this real hope. And I think that bringing it back to our early years in marriage, kind of taking it away from that Christian perspective, we had, even though you could just think positive thoughts, no, we had a hope because we had a substantial game plan and we were taking substantial action and steps that we were putting hope in. It wasn't this promise that like, if you do X, you will get Y, but it was kind of like those proverbial truths that more often than not, when you take these actions, you get this result. And so there was some substance for us to be able to have hope in.
Yeah, I like how you drew that the differentiation, because you can just sit here all day long and be like, oh, this is going to happen in my life, and it's so great. And it's not, you have to get up and take action and do something about it. And I think that money is one of those things it's such a charged topic, which is interesting for something that's amoral. But I think what's cool is money's not good. It's not bad. It just is. It's whatever you decide to use it for. And in the Proverbs, we see a lot of that practical, like the rain falls on the just and the unjust, or if you're lazy, then you're going to go hungry. Or if you're lazy, you're going to say there's a lion in the streets, and then you're going to not be provided for. And so it's just kind of interesting how we live in a world of cause and effect.
Yes. And
Elisha and I knew that because the action we were taking, and we were going to grow as people. And so I think that gave us a lot of hope, a lot of excitement. We were always excited. We were always overconfident. We're like, well, the thing is next month you can quit your job. Yeah. I think Elisha quit his job like 3 times before.
I thought we had made it. I thought we had arrived.
Yeah. We're like, we're making $500 online. You can quit your job.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that was my perspective. Elisha had a lot more.
Yeah, or we think a real estate deal is coming together and then it falls apart. There's just all of that. We were counting some money before it was in the bank account.
Yeah, we got used. We've learned since then. You don't count your chickens before they hatch.
Yes.
But that said, it did keep us really excited in the beginning. And I think that it's different than having a poor mindset, because a poor mindset is often this more wallowing mindset, this more like I'm a victim mindset, where it's like, I'm here because of X, Y, and Z. I'm going to stay here because of X, Y, and Z. And you're just a victim of your situation and you aren't taking responsibility for your life.
Yeah,
That's
and
more of a victim's
and it's
perspective.
probably more a part of your identity. It's just you
Yes.
like, this just is who I am. And again, I want to clarify, we don't believe in like what people would call like a prosperity gospel, or like a health and wealth prosperity gospel. What the Proverbs are, they're these like I hear pastors describe it as like it's when they're like laws of nature, kind of. They're not promises of God. They're not law. They're just when A happens, the result is usually usually this is the result of it. So, again, it's so easy to take like the train up your children in the way that they should go, and when they're old, they'll not depart. And you take that as law or as a promise, and that just puts like all the pressure on you, where it's like, boy, one, you're going to either have pride if your children walk in the faith, because you're like, well, see, I trained them up in the way that they should go, so I did my job, and now they're walking in the way of truth. And then if they aren't walking in the way of truth, you feel this condemnation, it's just this crazy pressure, versus realizing like, what, God's the one that works out his salvation in people's hearts. But this is a general law. In general, when you teach God's truths, your children walk in them. That's just kind of generally how it is. And I think when it comes to business, you can take those general truths and you say, God didn't tell me I will, for a matter of fact, have health and wealth if I, give this much to my church, or if I pray in this certain way. He hasn't promised anything like that. But there are these just kind of laws of nature where, like you said, the rain falls on the just and the unjust. So if you, plant your harvest at the right time of year, and if you're aware of what the weather patterns are, then you'll reap a harvest. That's just kind of how it works. And so I wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you clarified that. I don't really remember what I said, but I don't want people to assume that I was just like, oh, God's going to 100% bless because we were working hard or whatever. A lot of people work hard and things just...
Yeah,
it doesn't work out.
Like the seasons of life,
And
stuff.
I think the difference in that whole broke perspective, I guess, is Elisha and I very well may be broke again. People become millionaires and are broke the next day.
Yeah.
And then but they're broke. Like you said, it's not an identity. They just pick themselves up and start working again.
Yes.
And a poor person, it's more like, this is who I am. And Elisha and I never felt like this is who we are. It was just kind of like, well, this is where we're at today.
Yes.
And we want to enjoy the journey of working our way out of it.
Yes. And obviously, like the resources, money is like this endless, there's like no limit to it. And so when you don't form your identity around money, you don't get caught up on either side of it.
Yeah,
you don't say, oh, I'm poor. Oh, I'm rich and I'm wealthy, and now this is who I am. It's like this thing where, like Katie said, maybe we're doing better now that we were 5 years ago, but we also are well aware of the fact that things could change dramatically next week, or in a year from now, we could be sitting in a totally different financial position that's far, far worse than where we're at now. But that still doesn't depict our identity. And we just continue working, looking for ways to provide and different opportunities, knowing that the Lord causes the rain to fall on the just and the unjust, and we just work heartily as unto him.
Yeah. And I think during those early years, we were really strict on the budget. We had to be if we wanted to,
Yes, we used the cash system, the envelope system.
That was honestly the only time we've been able to stick to a budget.
Yes.
We stuck to a budget so well. And so if you're like looking for, there's like the Dave Ramsey thing out there. Dave Ramsey's great, but what really stuck out to me was Jordan Page and her model. And I just want to like briefly explain.
Yes, the fun, cheaper, free.
Yeah, fun, cheaper, free. You guys go look her up. She's just a blast. But anyway, something that she did, it really worked for me because it was, and for both of us, because it was weekly budgeting. So you'd sit down and write down everything for the month, but it's so easy to get thrown off after 30 days. You're like light years away from where you started as far as you spent way more money than you thought you would. And so I loved her method of writing out how much you need for groceries that month, how much you want to put for clothes, for entertainment, right? All the things. And then breaking it down by how much you could spend per week. And both Elisha and I spent most of the money. I still probably spend most of the money just because I spend most of that like household stuff.
Yeah, I think that's common. I think that's usually how it works.
Yeah, I don't know. But I enjoy it. So,
Well, it works for me too, because you do a really good job allocating our resources.
well, you put like, say, in the beginning, our budget for groceries was $75 a week. And so I would put $75 on the envelope that had the grocery money in it. And then I also had this other budget per week. And I think the other budget was like $25. So I could use that to, buy clothes, I don't know, what were the random things?
Oh boy. I mean, I
even
think
like dishwashing detergent or putting it towards a piece of furniture or
like a baby item, like an item for the baby.
I think I might have
like
had $50 a month actually. So that wouldn't have been $25 a week.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways. Yeah. So the way that, basically you never steal from another week. So I couldn't take money, say if I spent $80 or $90 on groceries, I wouldn't say, okay, well, I'll take that money from next week and only spend $65 next week. Instead, I would take from that other budget. So you could like cross categories, like if I didn't spend $25 on gas, we could spend $25 on dinner or something, but you only take from other categories along the week. And that was just,
That's
for whatever
good.
reason, that was like life-changing for us.
Yes. Well, I think the biggest, exactly. Going to the envelopes, keeping those categories separate, but being able to borrow like that lateral way, but not like forward, not being able to borrow from the future was really good. But then breaking it down from a monthly budget to a weekly budget was a big deal for us, because months are funny, because it'll like start on a Monday and then end on like a Wednesday, some month. I mean, I don't know if that's ever how it works, but you know what I'm saying? Like it's never like a perfect 4 weeks in a month. And so when you budget per week, then you're always sure to follow that, because then you can start over again on Monday.
And you keep really short accounts with yourself. So as we're going through the week, it's really easy to alter within the moment, be like, oh my goodness, we spent $5 over this week.
Mm-hmm.
We need to make sure that doesn't happen next week, versus getting to the end of the month and be like, whoa, how are we $250 over?
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was really helpful. Another concept that she had that was really good was, it's not what you're saying no to, it's what you're saying yes to.
Yeah.
And so that's when Elisha and I got a lot of different bank accounts, actually, because it's not fun to see $5 go in your $5,000 emergency fund. It's like $5,005, like yippee skippy twang, I think I'll buy the drink.
Yes,
or,
exactly.
Whatever.
That's right.
And so, but by having like, okay, we're having $5 go towards our marriage retreat that we want to go to, and that's only a $250 little
Purchase,
account we have, then like that
$5
got really exciting.
is a good start. Yeah.
And like we paid for a marriage retreat we went to off of selling random stuff that we didn't use anymore.
Yes.
On Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah.
But that wouldn't have been real motivating if it was going into this like big fund.
Yes, exactly.
Anyways.
No, I think you're so right. Breaking up those bank accounts. I know I think that's a common like advice but that really worked for us big time, is breaking that up so you can like see the little progress for each category. And that's what you're saying yes to is, the family vacation or the new bike for the kids or whatever it is.
And I think that's also another reason why we didn't feel poor, is because we read a lot of mindset books, a couple of them, which I can't really suggest the 4-hour work week, but if you go read it, just don't tell anyone you got it from me.
Yeah.
I can't suggest it, but it was game changing for our mentalities, work wise. And we were living the life we wanted to live. Like, we figured out how to have a 3-week vacation in San Clemente, California that year that we were hardly making any money.
Yeah. Yeah. It helps you really get outside the common, like accepted way of thinking around money and provision and all those things. And we've carried so many of those mindsets with us to where we are currently at.
Okay. One more book that I think is really good just for overall life stuff is The Compound Effect.
Yes.
I'd say those were the first 2 books we read our first year. Wouldn't you say that we're like,
oh yeah,
whoa, they've just.
Yes. Well, in fact, we read a book called The Miracle Morning on our honeymoon together. It was a self-help book. We got back and we read The Compound Effect like our first week. And then I think we read The 4-Hour Work Week like our second week after being back from our honeymoon. And then another book called The 10X Rule by Grant
Cardone.
Cardone. I mean, we could keep going, but and again, these are secular. These are secular people. They're straight up like business / self-development books. But so many of the mindsets were really critical in us, I think, getting from that place of broke to money being far less of like a pain point in our life. And now we view it just as this resource where it's like, okay, what has been placed on our heart? What do we want to move forward in? Okay, boom, let's put these resources towards that because we want to move this platform forward, or we want to take the kids here, or we want to give to this organization. And so that's a really fun place to be at. And we're not, we don't feel like we're promised just because we're here to be here forever.
No.
Like that's not, I don't think that's the way it works. But we're certainly grateful for being here. And I think that it's been nice. People say like, well, money won't make you happy, or, money's not the problem, or money's not the issue. But sometimes it is. Like I get that, like,
it is.
Yes, it's like this thing where your heart around it could be the issue. But when it's this constant practical stress and strain in your marriage and in your life, well, then it is an issue. Like, it's just, I think you can over spiritualize things because we know that the Lord's going to provide for us. But when you are constantly being met with bills that you can't quite afford to pay, that just brings the stress into your life. And I think that practically taking practically taking principles from Scripture and saying, okay, well, I'm going to work heartily as unto the Lord, applying these principles, working hard, being thoughtful with how I invest my time and money and my energy, and then seeing how the Lord chooses to provide for you through that can be a really rewarding thing. And when you're doing it as a united front, then it can be a really fun thing too.
Yeah, that's what I would say. Like, if you find yourself in a place where you're broke right now, whether you're newly married and you're like, oh my word, like this is way tighter than I thought it would be, or whether you're maybe in our position where you have 4 kids and you feel like we are totally broke. I know that was my parents' story. It's like, if you can make now fun, and if you can figure out ways to enjoy free things, to still have joy in your home, to have, romance in your marriage, to have delight in your children and have them delight in you, to have your relationship with the Lord thrive. Honestly, it's not only is it a fun place to be, because you turn life into a game where it's like, okay, this is just a game. How do we win? We're losing this money game. How do we win it? Yeah. And it can be like this awesome team bonding experience. And also, I think it takes away a lot of the fear of losing everything. Yeah. Like for me, I know that like our first couple of years married, this was our pain point. Now we have different pain points. Yeah. And it was awesome as far as our life, our marriage.
We just laughed and loved and lived. It was so good.
It was so good. And this whole time, the first 3 years we had 3 babies. So it was just like, one thing after the next. And I think what's so cool is I don't have this fear of being broke again. I know what the pain points are. It'll be hard. I'm prepared, I guess, mentally, like this very well may happen again in our life because we are entrepreneurial. We do take risks financially. And so this could happen. Yeah. But that said, it's not a scary thing. It's not. Yeah, exactly. Like I said, it can be a pain point, but your happiness isn't wrapped up in it either, or your contentment or your fulfillment. And so, I don't know how to give like the right mindset speech around money. And I don't even claim that like I've got the perfect mindset around money, but I do think that I've experienced being in an unhealthy place regarding money where I felt like I was a failure, or I felt like, a loser, or like I was just less than because of whatever the bank account said, or whatever the salary or the hourly wage was. And to remove myself from that place of being like, this doesn't have anything to do with who I am in Christ. It's empowering. So it doesn't mean you just settle and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to be complacent now and have, a shortage of finances for my whole life. It's like, well, no, I can actually work joyfully as unto the Lord now, because he's actually given me all things that pertain unto life and godliness. So I'm working from this place of strength. Like I'm already have everything I could ever want for life and godliness. He told me that I have all of that. So I'm going to be as good of a steward as I can with his gifts and talents
and go plant, and see what type of harvest. I'm going to plant and water and tend to these things and see what type of harvest comes. And that's, I think, where we're at now, is that we planted, we've harvested numerous things. Like, that's what's crazy, is that when I think of all the things that didn't take seed, or their root was shallow, or they got rained on, or the storm came through and wiped out the harvest, we've got a ton of those things.
Yeah.
But some of the seeds stuck. And we watered those, we tended to them, and here there's a harvest coming. We're like, oh, wow, like, that's so cool that the Lord decided to bring a harvest over in these things. But we're always going to be planting and tending and watering in every area of our life. But we're just talking about, finances now.
Yeah, I like how you drew that distinction between contentment and complacence.
Complacency? Yeah.
Yes, because we do want to seek to be content in every stage
Yes.
of life that we're in. But that doesn't mean that you can't work heartily.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. Anyways, this podcast has kind of gone long. I have like other things on my mind, but I feel like we need, we could do like a specific podcast.
Also, if you haven't watched this on YouTube, or if you are watching this on YouTube, you won't want to miss next week's episode, because I'm going to tell them. Next week, we're going to be introducing you to the brand new global headquarters of the Now That We're a Family podcast, a brand new state-of-the-art studio, filming and audio studio. And so you won't want to miss that.
You're pretty proud of your concrete painting job that you did.
Well, you did most. Well, actually, yeah, we kind of split that job. You're right.
State of the art.
No, I just want people to get on and watch. If you think I'm overhyping this, you're wrong. You will not want to miss it next week.
I better order the lights right now.
Well, didn't we get a couple of lights? Do we need more lights than that?
Yeah.
Oh,
We
wow.
need lots of
Okay,
lights.
I guess we have some more work to do before we're ready for the big reveal. Folks, thank you so much for listening to today's episode. We so appreciate you being on this journey of life with us. And we're excited to talk to you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.